is a huge honor for me to bring back. I don't think I've ever brought anyone back. Have I ever brought anyone back? I don't think I have. By the way, if I've never brought you back, this is number 171. Yeah, you were 171, and it took 171 podcast interviews before I begged someone to come back. But if you were one of the first 170 and you want to come back, or you're a listener, and you're just out there commuting to work, and you say, I want to rant for an hour with Howard, email me, howard@dentaltown.com. But the reason I wanted to bring Scott Leune back, who's a legend in my mind and a legend in so many minds, is because we during our first interview, we never got to the topic of outsourcing in dentistry, and also, Socrates said that the two major emotions were fear and greed. Greed is I want to listen to Scott Leune and have a better, successful practice, but fear is corporate dentistry. And a lot of dentists, this is my opening question to you. When I was little, every pharmacist owned his own shop. And now I'm 53, and I don't even know of a single solo practicing pharmacist outside of a hospital doing special pharmacy needs for in a hospital setting. I mean, they all got swallowed up by Walgreens and CVC. Is it CVC or CVS?
CVS.
CVS. Is corporate dentistry, are we all going to be working at Walgreens and CVS in 25 years?
I don't think so, but I think that a whole lot of us will. I believe that I don't believe that the corporate dentistry's got to own 95% of dentistry. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think corporate dentistry is going to hit a tipping point. They own enough in any given market to therefore control a lot of that market and have a lot of market share. And they're not going to keep building practices where they're competing with their own practices. I believe, I don't know what the number is, like today maybe 14 or 15% of all practices are involved with corporate dentistry. I don't know if that has to get to 40 until everything's changed, or if it's 30 or 50, I don't know what it is. I don't think it's going to be 95. I think we're always going to have a spot in dentistry for the small guy with lots of goodwill. The dentist is just doing some unique things. The community loves this dentist. I think that practice will always have a spot. It's going to be difficult to sell that practice, but I think that practice will always have a spot. And I think there's always going to be a spot for some of the regional guys that are really trying to get more efficient and do things better than the corporate shops. They're running higher efficiency, or maybe they've found a way to do better marketing or better care. I think there's always going to be that entrepreneurial dentist that's competing, but I think the middle of the market, the PPO, fee-for-service practice, gets out of dental school a couple of years, finally buys or starts a practice, and is just going to do everything the regular way. That middle is going to be what's hurting over time, and it's that middle that I think a lot of dentists will turn into corporate dentistry at some point.
My son Greg thinks that we'll follow the lawyers because they got into corporate dentistry back in the corporate law back in the 70s, these huge firms, but they kind of plateaued at the 50-cent margin. There's a million attorneys, and half of them work for a big firm, and the other half work individually. He thinks that's a better predictor than a pharmacist, because I've been in countries where the nationalized healthcare system loads your prescription on your card, and you go stick it in an ATM machine, and a bottle comes down, the pills come down, it throws a label on it, and you open it up and get it out just like we do our cash. And that machine, by the way, that I saw myself, was made in Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's not even legal to sell it. So do you want to start with outsourcing or surviving corporate dentistry?
Well, I think let's start with outsourcing, because that will lead to surviving corporate dentistry, I think. So we could start there. A lot of dentists have never heard of outsourcing, or they've got some misconceptions. They don't understand when they should use it, when they shouldn't, how pricing works, what's possible. I think we could talk a lot about outsourcing.
Well, take it away, buddy.
Okay. Well, let's start with the problem that we have. We'll start with the problem. Dentists, we have a staffing problem, because just because we get 6 phone calls at once doesn't mean we need to go hire 6 receptionists, right? So we've got these peaks and these highs and lows of the day that hurt us. We're only staffed up maybe to answer 2 phone calls, and so we miss the 4. Or we have a really busy hour and then a dead hour, and a really busy hour and a dead hour, but we're always missing opportunity because we can't have an army of people working our practice. We can't have an army of people make sure that every single person has paid the money they owe us today. We can't have an army of people make sure that every insurance problem was resolved as efficiently as it needed to be. We can't have every single phone call answered. We can't just go call 1,000 patients and fill the hygiene schedule. We're only staffed up so much. And after that, it's not worth hiring more staff. So we've got this problem where we've got 2 front office staff. We can only answer so many calls. We can only fill the schedule so much. What do we do with the rest? All the other phone calls we don't answer. And that can be outsourced. In other words, our team on site is awesome. They're doing great. They're busy. But what the pieces they drop, the missed calls, or not filling the schedule, or not making the collection calls, all those things can be outsourced, where if a dental office gets 10 phone calls at once, they can have all 10 answered, but they're not paying 10 people. They're only paying their 2 full-timers, plus they're renting 8 more for 4 minutes. And so it's very powerful financially. You know, a great example of that is, on one extreme, the startup practice. A startup practice can't afford to hire 2 or 3 schedulers to work Monday through Friday, 7 to 7. But what they can do is afford to hire their 1 front office person and outsource all the phone calls they miss so that they have phone coverage Monday through Friday, 7 to 7. They have phone coverage on Saturdays. And they could outsource phones, they can outsource insurance, billing, collection calls, auditing, marketing. They can outsource almost everything in the practice. And they may have the payroll cost of their 1 front office person, and they might have equivalent payroll costs of like a third of a person to an outsourcing firm. Yet they get the power and predictability and quality of an army of highly trained specialists doing that job. There's no way they'd be able to afford to have that outside of an outsourcing environment.
And all the S&P 500 does this. I mean, when you call Walgreens, sometimes you get your pharmacist right across the street, and sometimes it's a call center in Tennessee because they got too many people calling. My cable company, Cox Cable, sometimes you call and it's local. Sometimes you call and it's a call center in Tennessee. I know Rick Workman, who built the biggest dental chain in the world, Heartland Dental Care. I know he built a call center, and he told me that his biggest problem with his call center is that Effingham's only got 10,000 people. He says that, I think I've hired every single person who didn't have a job in Effingham, and I still need more. So the big boys are doing this, aren't they? Or the big girls?
Yeah, they're all doing it, but they all have a weakness, a big weakness. The big boys do.
We can't call them big boys anymore because 45% of the graduating class is women. And I'll tell you something, when you're a dental journalist like me writing a column, if you refer to a dentist as he, you'll get an email or a text or a private message or whatever. If you call them all a she, you'll never ever get a complaint from a man. And so you just have to retool your mind. You have to just say she, her, and it makes everyone happy. The males don't care, and the women like it.
Yeah. Well, I'm usually politically incorrect on accident, so I apologize if I offend anyone in the next hour by screwing that up.
I don't think I've ever offended anyone.
I don't think so either.
I've offended entire rooms, but that wasn't any one person. That was the entire auditorium. But yeah. So continue. I'm sorry.
So these large corporate groups have a big weakness. Heartland, let's use them as an example. Probably one of the highest respected DSOs across the country. They've built something huge and tremendous, and they're very successful at their game.
People don't know what DSOs mean.
DSO, it's the corporate dentistry, dental support organization or dental services organization. It's what we dentists might think of as a corporate chain. There's a tremendous amount of benefits involved with those corporate entities, and Heartland's got to be one of the most respected ones. But even Heartland and all the others have an inherent weakness in their model of outsourcing. A Heartland practice can never fire the Heartland call center, right? A Pacific billing center only has to be as good as whatever internal demands or accountability that company has. And that's going to inherently be weaker than a company like mine or other companies like mine that can be fired and that have to be very cost efficient and that have to be scalable on a much larger scale and deal with lots of different types of systems and models. You know, I kind of view it like the post office versus UPS. Post office answers to one person, and that's no one, the taxpayer, right? And they only have to be as efficient as to not lose as much money. Whereas you look at UPS, and they answer to a whole lot of people and can be fired, and they have to be competitive. You have to understand that the outsourcing term and the thought, the model, has gotten a bad rap because it was the corporate groups that started outsourcing first. And the quality of some of those groups was not good. It was poor. And please know, when I say Heartland, I don't know what their quality is. I'm just using them as an example. But some of the corporate groups, most people would say, had horrible quality with outsourcing. People then assume that's what outsourcing is like, or they assume outsourcing is like going to India with a phone call. Neither one of those are true. Neither one of those are what I'm talking about here today.
I got, when you said the post office, it's funny, I got rid of my landline because every time I came home, I had 3 messages and it was all telemarketers, and I thought, why am I spending time deleting all these messages? I got rid of my landline, and I tried to get rid of my post office box because it's just all junk now. I have to walk out to the street every day to throw away all this junk because I pay all my bills digitally and online and all that kind of stuff. I could not get rid of my post office, my box. I can't. I legally can't take away my box and say, don't deliver mail. I thought that was crazy. So you have a call center. How many people do you have, and what functions do they do? Is the value added? I work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So you're going to take the calls from 6 a.m. to 5, and after 5 and weekends, or is it more value added during the day? Chaos theory. You know, unfortunately, phone calls don't come in 1 every 10 minutes. They come in 6 at one time, and then they don't come in at all for 15 minutes. What are you doing in your call center?
All right, I'll answer all those questions. First of all, our call center is not a call center; it's a management center. We answer phones. We also make outbound calls, fill hygiene schedules. We audit calls. We return missed calls. If a patient hangs up and doesn't leave a voicemail, we catch that, call them back, and schedule them. We confirm appointments, but we also handle all the insurance AR claims, verification, EOB processing. We handle all the patient AR, collection calls. We also do marketing. We do chart auditing. We do supply procurement and management. And we got negotiated relationships with lots of vendors for lower pricing for all kinds of things. We do a whole lot in my company.
For how many offices?
140, 150, and we're adding about 4 or 5 offices a week.
Now,
we're hiring about...
Are you helping? Are you augmenting the overflow helping? Or are you just doing the whole damn thing? Or does it depend on the office?
We do about 50 things, and they're all a la carte. So some offices just want us to clean up their insurance AR. Other offices want us to do everything we know how to do, and some offices just come to us because we can get them really cheap rates on a bunch of stuff they pay money for. So every office is different, and everything we do is completely custom. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and so I'd like to, if it's okay with you, I'd like to kind of talk to you about the 2 types of relationships a dental office might have with an outsourcing firm. Because if you don't pick one of these 2, you get screwed. So dentists can use outsourcing firms either in a support role or in a replacement role. A support role means I've got a full practice staff on site, and whatever my staff can't handle, whatever they're bogged down with, whatever calls they miss, or whatever it is, whatever pieces are dropped, I'm bringing in support to handle that, to catch those pieces. So that's outsourcing everything we can't handle in a practice. You've got the replacement role, though. The replacement role says, I am changing the model of my practice. I am literally sending all my insurance verification away. I'm sending all of my confirmation calls or all of my collection calls. I'm taking an entire group of duties and outsourcing the whole thing. That's replacement. They both have great benefits for specific practices, but what you never want to do is be stuck in the middle. You never want to have a full team on site and a full team off site and then be overstaffed. You don't want to be paying two different teams to do the work of one. So you're either paying an outsourcing firm to just pick up all the pieces you drop, or you are sending out a ton of work to an outsourcing firm and therefore have less staff. Maybe you don't hire as many staff as quickly as you think, or maybe you let go of your worst staff member. Whatever it is, you have to have a smaller payroll in your practice to justify outsourcing all that work to someone else.
Well, first let's go to benchmark. What should labor costs be? What is the national average? What is the national average for, let's just go through it, labor, lab, supplies, facility, and when people start outsourcing, how can they improve those? I mean, what numbers are you seeing?
Yeah, so...
don't you like the way I ask, like, rapid burst questions? I mean, I throw out 10 questions just so one of them might be good.
Of course, this is good. So I'm going to disagree with just about everyone else out there right now. Everyone else out there, every guru, every consultant will tell you you need between 20 and 24% of your collections to be for staff payroll, for example. 24
and what?
Let's just say between 20 and 24%. The number's bogus, though. So I don't agree, but that's what people will tell us. We've got highly successful practices. I've got one right now that we help build that's at 14%. I've also got very successful practices that are 30%. What I care much more about is how much money is the dentist taking home.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you got to have a little extra staff to take home more money. Or some models don't require a lot of staff. You got a low break-even point in a smaller practice. You're doing highly productive dentistry. You don't need as many staff. Then if you're a Medicaid model with low fees, you got to have a bigger facility, and you got to have more staff. Your overhead's going to be a different model. So I don't like just saying you need 24%, and if you're over that, then you're in trouble. I would much rather focus on what do you take home. On outsourcing, it does affect your payroll. So in a support role, you're increasing your payroll, but that's an investment in getting higher new patient flow and getting your AR cleaned up. In having all those pieces that you drop, have someone else pick them up and do something with them. On a replacement role, it many times is dollar for dollar. So instead of paying your own staff person $1 for the hours worked, you're paying an outsourcing firm that same dollar, but they're doing a lot more work. So for example, you could pay for an average size office, if you were to pay an outsourcing firm the equivalent of your front office person's payroll, they might do double the work. And it's probably going to be higher quality. Not because your front office team's bad. The front office team's awesome. The problem is they're doing 20 things at once. Instead of having one person do 20 things, I have 20 people that just do one thing all day long, every day. Verify MetLife, uninterrupted. They do it so much faster. They do it so much better. And not only that, every single person in my outsourcing section of my company is recorded and audited twice per day and scored and bonused at the end of the week, or trained or demoted if needed at the end of the week. It's impossible to go audit those 20 things every single day in a dental practice to make sure quality's high. That's why when practices come on board and they start outsourcing, usually someone's telling them their insurance AR is completely screwed up, or their patient AR is screwed up, or they've got claims that are more than 2 years old that can't be resubmitted, or the staff's been writing off a bunch of stuff that maybe shouldn't have been written off. You know, you're usually getting some bad news when you start outsourcing, but that's good though. It's the process of kind of healing and improving the systems of the practice that weren't able to be done well by your great team because they're being overworked and having to do 20 things at once.
And wouldn't you also say that there's no training for the typical front office person? I mean, the dentist goes to 8 years of college, the hygienist goes to 4 years of college. My assistants went to a year-long dental assisting program, but dentists just hire people off the street to be their front office, and they're never trained. I mean, they're just thrown at the desk and say, figure it out. Wouldn't you say that's pretty much what you see in the real world?
That's what happens. You hire someone, you say, hey, sit next to Susie, good luck. And that's the training program. And then you got to deal with hiring, you got to deal with firing them, you got to deal with managing them and sick leave. And and drama, and they're not being trained, they're not being audited. You don't know if they're doing a good job or not. And dentists don't even listen to their phone calls or audit their insurance claims or any of that. A lot of that gets solved with outsourcing in the new outsourcing model. So again, it's not outsourcing to India. It's not some corporate chain that doesn't have the quality control measures they need in place. This is a new age of outsourcing and managing a practice.
And when you said in the beginning that, when I said how big is corporate dentistry going to take over, you said, corporate dentistry is going to get bigger, and you said the middle is going to get squeezed. Define again the other end, someone who's doing, you defined the middle, but what was the other end of the corporate?
Yeah, on one end, you'll have the local dentist, lots of goodwill, highly productive, great relationships with the patient. They might have some sort of specialty thing they do, but it's that goodwill dentist that everyone wants to go see because of that dentist. That's on one end of the spectrum. That's like in your example, the lawyers, that's like a great tax lawyer, right, who has his own shop. Then on the other end of the spectrum are the entrepreneurial dentists that are truly competing on a volume model, just like maybe some of the corporate groups are. So they're doing corporate type setup, but they're doing it successfully themselves on a local level. That might be some of the smaller legal groups for, like I live in San Antonio, it might be a San Antonio legal group. That's not necessarily a big national chain. I think those two will find their place in dentistry. The middle, I think, will have squeezed profit margins. It'll be much harder to compete, and at the end of the day, their practice are going to be worth very little money when they try to sell it.
Because that setup I was asking about is what I see when you get a little bit bigger, you have some scales of economy. You can bring in someone who just specializes in marketing and HR. You can build up a management team. And to me, I kind of think the sweet spot is like maybe 10 offices, 12. I see a lot of regional plays, like say in South Dakota or North Dakota, where this group's got like 12 offices spread out over 100 miles, and so they got a centralized location, and they bring in a layer of management, and it's really efficiencies. I don't really know if the sweet spot when you start adding another layer of management for all these different states, because I don't know if the corporate headquarters is masterminding enough efficiencies to make the second layer. So I do see multiple group practices. Even within a single group practice, if you got 3 doctors in one office, you can bring in a high dollar office manager who's just rocking it, carrying a lot of these functions out. But I think that the middle, too small, doesn't really have any scales of economy. And so you're saying that those people would benefit the most from an outsource model like what you've got.
Well, no, yes, that you're exactly right on some instances, but let me be a little more concise. As practices grow, they start breaking their own systems. The volume starts making them crumble at the edges. Sometimes it's just growing from 1 dentist to 2 dentists. Sometimes it's growing from 1 location to 3 locations. And wherever that happens, it happens in a different spot for everyone, depending on how naturally successful their practices are and how talented they are in managing their growth and building the infrastructure. But at some point, to go to the next level costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of expertise. Going from 1 practice to 3, you add a layer. Growing from 3 to 10, you add a layer. Growing from 10 to 20, you add a layer. But every time you add a layer, it's so expensive and so difficult, you almost have to grow up to that very quickly after you've added that layer. That's why you'll see companies like all the large corporate groups. They started small, they grew bigger, then they started breaking down, then they built a center, then they grew bigger, then they ran out of money, they brought in investors, and they built another layer of infrastructure. It just keeps going up more and more and more. What we're trying to do is give the private dentist the depth and power of a huge infrastructure without having to actually build those layers themselves. It's not just a private dentist, it's groups as well. Groups of 12 that can't afford to go build out a $3 million management center and bring in the talent they need, because they'd have to have 30 to justify it. They can now just tap into a company like mine, where we're nationwide. We've got a huge infrastructure, and they don't have to go build it themselves. So for the group practice all the way down to the solo practice, outsourcing now gives you the ability to keep growing and maintain control of your quality, maintain control of your success without having to actually pay for and recreate all these layers of infrastructure that you have to keep growing.
And what I used to call this, when I started my monthly column in '94, the Howard Speaks column, is that when you're a small practice, your problem is a little barking Doberman in the corner. But somewhere between 1 million and 3 million, that Doberman turns into a Tyrannosaurus Rex and you bankrupt. I mean, it's so counterintuitive when people say, I can't believe that practice in Vegas went bankrupt. They did $3.5 million last year. And I said, yeah, because a Doberman pincher of your weak spots in your systems is manageable at under $1 million. But at 1 to 3 million, it's the fastest sweet spot to bankruptcy, because these problems grow so big, they're insurmountable. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. You have a bad month and you have a little practice, that's pretty easy to handle. You got a bad month in a big organization, a lot of zeros on the end of that bad month. And a lot of organizations overexpand. So their costs go way up, but then they can't pay for those added costs. It's a tough deal. And those practices that you mentioned, 1 to 3 million, when they're failing, they sell. And they sell to corporate dentistry. That's how they get out of it. So corporate dentistry, massive infrastructure, they could buy those practices at pennies on the dollar and transition them pretty easily to their systems.
But back in my day when I started, like I say, 87, I started my column 94. Before there was Stephen Thorne at Pacific Dental Services and Rick Workman at Heartland. I mean, they just would fold. I mean, and it was a regular occurrence. I mean, every 2 or 3 months, I was hearing of $1 million practice, a $2 million practice, absolutely going under. So what is your sweet spot for? So I'm always trying to think of my viewer. So these dentists are driving to work. What's the low hanging fruit on outsourcing to Scott at breakawaypractice.com? Let me rephrase this a different way. I believe. I know my homies. I know dentists. I mean, I was starting in the 6th grade, I was going to work with Dr. Kenny Anderson, the dentist next door to me. I believe their head, and I did this myself Monday, I mean, your head's looking at a root canal, and you have no idea what's going on in the rest of the world, and you're just, and they don't see their problems. They don't know what's going on at the front desk. Their front desk could be surfing on Facebook for an hour, and they wouldn't even know it. And you're just, This dentist is driving to work, and he's saying, I want you to tell him, what are red flags in his office that while your head is buried in placing an implant with your surgical guide and you're trying to read this CBCT and you're just absorbed in implants and root canals, that you're dropping a lot of balls up front? Because I don't think a lot of them even believe it. I mean, it's not so much denial, Scott. I just believe that you know what you know. You just don't know what you don't know. And you would never get mad at your dog or your cat for not going to the grocery store and buying new cat food. And you just know what you don't know what you don't know. So can you paint any pictures for my listener who's commuting to work, who's worried about, if this implant's going to go in successfully today, or the one he's going to uncover, he hopes that, it took. What red flags might there be that they need to be, that they're dropping balls up front? And
I'll tell you, dentists aren't even looking for flags. That's the problem. If I ask a dentist, what's your missed call rate, he has no idea. If I say, what's your days of sales outstanding on insurance, meaning how long does it take you to collect the average insurance dollar owed, no idea. They don't know what type of write-offs are being done and how frequently. They don't know what the reappointment rate is, or what percent of their patients have consent forms signed. They're just not even looking at the flags. So it's tough for me to come up with red flags because the dentists don't even see flags. They don't even open their eyes for it because they're so busy. I'll tell you that the areas that we see the biggest problems in practices, for sure, insurance and billing is a massive one. You mentioned these $2-3 million practices going out of business. We see these practices come in. They typically have 2.5 months of collections worth of AR, meaning money owed to them. Consultants will tell you should have 1 month, maybe up to a month and a half. And our clients, once we're done cleaning everything up, they're less than half of a month of collections. We got a client in Atlanta who came to us with $330-something thousand worth of money owed to them, and they're under 50 now. Within 3 months, we freed up almost $300,000 for this client in cash that was just sitting in his practice, stuck in these claims that weren't being resubmitted. Insurance and billing is a big one. It's a huge mess. It's a pain to deal with. Staff don't like making the collection calls. They don't like cleaning up the list and resubmitting the claims. Another big one is phones.
Wait, you said the word AR. Someone might not know what AR means.
Yeah, accounts receivables, money that's owed to a practice, either from insurance or from a patient. There are very specific systems and processes, and we have at our disposal a bunch of technology that we can afford at our size to help us sift through the software and look at all the problems and one by one, patient at a time, go clean it up.
Okay, so my listener's driving to work. So when he pulls up to his office, he should walk up to his front office and say, I want to know how many months my AR is and what should it be at and what should be a nightmare where I say I got to email Scott@breakawaypractice.com or info@breakawaypractice.com.
If they collect $100,000 a month, then their total AR should be less than $100,000.
So 1 month, 1 month's production, 1 month's collection should be your AR.
That should be the worst it should be.
The worst is be. What would be an A, B, C, and an F for $1? So you produce and collect $1 a month. What would be an AR for?
An A would be 50%. Let's just say a C is 100%. And over that we got an F. We got a problem. But I'll tell you, it's a lie though, because most staff, when they pull an AR report, the write-offs they make the AR look healthier than it really is. When you look at the money that's owed to a practice and also consider all the money that was written off because for whatever reason it wasn't collectible, that's how you get that true number. It's the write-offs that make the dentist blind to what's really happening. It's not uncommon for a claim to not get paid or a patient to not pay, and the staff are writing it off. That's very, very common to see. So even if you pull that AR report, it's probably not the whole truth.
And when you're a young dentist listening to this and you're graduating from school looking for a job, if you read the contract fine, they don't pay you a % of production. They pay you a % of adjusted production. So you're not going to be getting, a % of what you earn. You're going to be getting a % of what that you produce minus what the front office adjusted off. What are common things they adjust off, and what are common reasons to adjust off that should not be adjusted off?
The most common thing we see is that a claim came back denied. They may have resubmitted it, but not with all the necessary paperwork and the narratives and everything they should have. Claim comes back denied again, or they may never hear back from the insurance company. They didn't follow up. There's no record of them following up on that claim. And at some point, they either write that claim off or they turn it into a statement for a patient. When they turn it into a statement for the patient may not pay. Patient might get mad. They may post bad online review. They may leave the practice. And at some point, they write that balance off. And when you backtrack it all, it's commonly caused by either improper insurance verification or by not resubmitting that failed claim properly.
Okay, and when you say proper insurance verification, if you came into my office, you're Scott Leune, and you say, here's my insurance, should I verify every single patient? Should I call the insurance company, go online? Does every new patient's insurance need to be verified?
Yes, because we believe that the insurance verification process, if that's screwed up, we will have continuous work and screw-ups after that. So we've used all the technologies out there to try to verify insurance automatically or without having to call insurance companies. But the reality is today, as of today, so 2015, we still have to call insurance companies. We do get some information from technology, but we still have to call them because we are going to go create the employer group, put all the downgrades in there, put all the clauses, waiting periods, age limits, all that in there ahead of time, find out the deductibles, find out what they've already spent for the year, and make it completely clean in the software with notes that even a clinical team member could understand before the patient is seated for their work.
I know, and I know I'm going to piss off probably 100% of viewers with this comment, but you know, that's one of the arguments for a single-payer health system, just because you get rid of all that bullshit. I mean, I have to pay Kalani that's her full-time job, humanly verifying to another human. I mean, you're already signed up for a PPO for a reduced fee. Why don't the insurance companies make that automatic? Is it our dental office software? Is it Delta Dental? Is it Prudential and Connecticut General? I mean, it's crazy. And then you look at the savings from a national health insurance in Scandinavia by just not having all of those people doing all this noise. You just can move so much more money over to just getting out vaccinations and emergency rooms and health. I mean, so why do we have to humanly verify? Is it the insurance companies or is it our management information software systems?
It's the insurance companies. So there are companies out there right now trying to get all the dental insurance companies on a common system, or at least tap into their databases so that a lot of this can be automated. You know, the vision, 5-10 years from now is that you don't verify insurance anymore. Patient shows up, you before you prep the crown, you submit a pre-estimate that in a split second comes back and the insurance company immediately tells you what's paid. You prep the crown, you're done, you submit the claim, and within a split second, the money's in your account. That's the vision. But to get there, all the insurance companies have to open up their databases and allow third-party software companies to tap into it to make that a possibility. And it's happening. It's just very slow. At the end of the day, insurance companies on one hand are going to try to do things that make our life a little harder to collect from them. Whenever we deal with insurance, I always tell people there's no best scenario. It's always the least worst option that we got to pick. So we got to pick the least worst option, and we got to do it as effectively and efficiently as possible. And again, here's a great example with outsourcing. If you have 8 patients that your front office person has to verify insurance for, that's 8 phone calls. They're on hold 8 times. When my company has to verify insurance on 8 patients, we call MetLife one time. We verify 8 patients from 5 different offices on one phone call, and we're only on hold once. So we're a lot more efficient. And it's being done by a person who only deals with MetLife and creates the employer groups and EagleSoft or Dentrix, whatever program they're assigned to. So it's very accurate. It's very efficient. It's very accurate. It's just part of the power that outsourcing gives to private dentists.
Okay, but when I was in MBA school at Arizona State University, they said, focus groups were just a complete waste because you'd set people down and say, would you pay extra if this product was made in your country, America, and providing jobs in America instead of a communist country like China? And they say, absolutely. Would you pay more if it was all biodegradable and all natural? Absolutely. And then you go watch the consumer and they walk into Walmart and they buy on price. So I know all my listeners, every single one of them saying, Scott, get to the point. What does this cost? What is the price? I see the theory. I see this, but what would this cost me to do this with you?
Yeah. Well, every outsourcing firm charges differently. So I don't know what the cost is for other companies, but in our company, the outsourcing part of our company, we charge based on a cost-plus model. In other words, if a dentist uses 0.5% of my insurance verification department that month, they pay 0.5% of that department's costs. In other words, they're only paying for the amount of the department that they happen to use that month. And we know, based on how big they are, how much that would typically be. So when a dental practice calls us up and say, hey, I'm interested in saving money on supplies, I need better marketing, and I want insurance verification services, we'd look at the size of their practice and we'd say, okay, all the other practices of your size pay this much for insurance verification on average. So the great news is, as we get bigger, our prices keep getting lower, because we only pass on, our pricing is based purely on our cost. And dentists don't have to commit to some sort of cost every month. They only pay for whatever they need, whatever they use on any given month.
And the other the other thing my viewers should realize, because not everybody gets the Dentaltown magazines on Dentaltown. I mean, we mail every month to 125,000 dentists. We have 202,000 members, but a lot of those are around the world. But this is a small community, and Scott is a big-time townie with 2,000 posts. So it's a very small world. And all my friends that know you, they all I hear is fantastic things. I haven't heard a single thing other than Scott's crushing it. I mean, really, that's all I hear is that you're doing good. But my more specific question to my listeners, Scott, are you because you help with 60 startups, so is everything you're talking about best for someone who's starting up? Is it best for someone who's plateaued and been out there 10, 20, 30 years, or is it best for someone who's like dying? I mean, my practice is 20%, collects 20% less than it did 10 years ago, or is it best for a group practice of 5 locations? I mean, what is your sweet spot, and who are you targeting?
Well, we've got
Was that enough questions?
Yeah. No, I got it. We got a 9-week waiting list. We're not targeting anyone. We're just trying to get enough desks built in time to handle everyone. But here are the types of dentists that it just makes no-brainer sense for, and I'll tell you why for each one. Startup, we already talked about that. You can open a practice with minimal staff, with minimal history or expertise, but have the power of an army of people doing everything perfectly, doing everything very well. For 60, 70 hours a week of coverage, and it costs much less than hiring your own people. Okay, so startup practice, no-brainer. If someone's opening a startup practice today and is not outsourcing, they have completely missed the boat. That means they just don't understand the model. There's a startup practice. Then you've got the growing practice, a practice that is hiring more people. They may choose instead to not hire, but to just keep their awesome team, their core team intact. And instead of introducing more people they got to manage and audit and train, they start outsourcing all the things their awesome team doesn't want to do or can't do well. So they may outsource missed calls, they may outsource collection calls or insurance verification instead of hiring the next person. Okay, so that's the growing practice. Then you got practices, like we got practices in California or New York where just to pay someone to answer the phone costs them $22 an hour. They might outsource purely because it's cheaper. So you do have some areas of the country where it's just cheaper to outsource to San Antonio, Texas. Then you've got large practices. Large practices have a hard time controlling quality. They have a hard time seeing what's going on. They're very successful, but any slight improvement in their practice adds a lot more profit, a lot more zeros. And as they keep growing bigger, maybe adding a dentist, things start falling through the cracks. For them, outsourcing is about controlling quality and making them hit a higher level of profit. Then you got 2 more offices. You got the office that's going bankrupt. That office, they're on fire. They don't need to hire a consultant and then train them for a year to hopefully put out a fire. They need to hire the fire department. So they need to outsource everything that's on fire so it's fixed as quickly as possible so that they don't go bankrupt. It's sad when this happens, but it's the way they can save their practice. The last kind is the group.
Before you go into group, have you ever had a phone call where someone told you what's going on and you just said, dude, you should call Rick Workman. You just need to walk away?
I have had a couple times in the last 2 years where I've told a dentist their practice is basically burnt down. There's no salvaging what has happened. They're better off walking away. I have had to say that a few times.
Did that dentist, did he just shoot a lion?
They declared bankruptcy. Okay. It's sad that sometimes people are in that pickle, but I've had a lot of practices, dentists talk to me about failing, and we've been able to save them. The last group of dentists is the group. So whether it's small groups, medium-sized groups, or even some of the larger regional groups, as they grow to multiple locations, the quality, everything starts crumbling around the edges. And at some point, they're going to have to build their own call center, their own billing center. And it's just better. Quality's better. The capital investment's cheaper, and their growth is faster if they tap into an infrastructure that's already built. They can focus on more new practices, managing the clinical side and the dentist, and not spend all their money and time trying to build the infrastructure. You know, my own practices, which I've recently sold, by the way, they just closed. But
who did you sell to?
A local dentist that wanted to own a group. My own practices are in the complete replacement role of outsourcing. So I'd have a practice with two dentists, 2 or 3 hygienists, and 1 front office person, and that's it. And that front office person only checked people in, checked people out, occasionally answered an overflow phone call, and presented finances. That's the extreme of the model where the practice is focused completely on the patients there. They're not being slammed with phone calls. They're not having to confirm appointments or fill a schedule or deal with collection calls or verification or any of that stuff. It's all done elsewhere for a lower cost, more efficiency, and a lot more firepower in case you have 10 calls coming in at once.
I want to say, since I am old enough to be your father, since I am 17 years older than you, I want to say one thing to you guys, because you know when you walked around half a century, you pick up some things. I personally think my dentist homies, it's a pride issue. The dentists are used to always getting A's. They're always used to getting the Eagle Scout. They're always used to being success at everything, and it's just their ego. They're crushing it in molar endo. They're crushing it in bone grafting. So they just expect I should be crushing in all these things. And I believe that the neural anatomists are saying we don't see any difference in brains in humans, ants, and dolphins. We've all got the same brain. The reason this person is an expert in violin is because she played 4 hours a day. The reason this girl got a gold medal in gymnastics is because she started at 5, she did it 6 hours a day, and she did it for 20 years. I don't want to play the violin. And I think the clinical dentist, dude, you got to be honest with yourself. It's okay to not give a shit about insurance verification. It's okay to want to take a bone grafting course and not look at your ARs and all this stuff. It's just okay. You're not a failure. You're not a loser because you don't care about all the front office shit. And quite frankly, it doesn't even interest me that much. I would rather listen to 21 hours of nonstop bone grafting information than go sit there and look at all these damn reports. Now, I got an MBA. I trained myself. I forced myself. But I've developed a team. I got 50 employees. I've developed a team to do everything I don't like. I believe you, your assistant, and receptionist all have the exact same brain, and you're only good at what you're interested in. So, dude, if you're not interested, it's okay. You're not dumb. You're not a loser. You just would rather do awesome dentistry than sit there on trying to figure out your Dentrix soft dent accounting reports. Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
I do think that if we're going to stereotype dentists, that would be the way to do it. You do have those oddballs that are all into all the reports, and you have the other oddballs that just don't even care. They're almost proud that they don't have to market well or they don't have to track numbers, that they're just busy anyways. I think when you look at the business processes, when they're improved, quality goes up, profit goes up, stress goes down. It's just that way. If patients didn't get bad collection calls, and if your receptionists were able to answer the phone properly, and if you had proper insurance verification, all that kind of crappy stuff that we have to deal with in dental office, if it's done well, people are happier. The day is not a roller coaster anymore. The money comes in. The patient flows where it should be. Life is just a lot better. It's a lot easier when things are done well.
But let's get a hard measurement. If you walked up to a dentist and asked him 10 scientific questions about adhesive dentistry, bonding, megapascals, dentin, enamel, and then you ask him 10 questions. What's your overhead? What's your AR? 10 economic numbers. What percent of the clinical dentistry's questions would they get right? And what percent of the business, managerial financing, managerial economics questions would they get right?
Yeah, they'd get most of the dental stuff right, and most of the business stuff they wouldn't get right, and the things they might think they had right are misinformation. I ask a dentist in my seminar, so what are 3 numbers you track? They always, for the last 5 years, have always said the same 3 numbers. production, collections, and new patients. None of those tell you if you're making any money. None of them. I've collected millions and lost money. They don't know what to look at. And it's just...
And then when you go into that office from your friend that you met at your seminar, and you go into this office, the three numbers they gave you, what percent of the time are they not even right?
Oh, yeah. There's a bunch of assumptions made.
Well, I mean, what percent would you say? When they tell you any economic number, and then you're in their office and you look up the number, what percent of the time is the number they gave you not even right?
It's so rare that it's right that we will not ask the question. We run our own analytics software through their practice, and we come up with the 15 or 20 things that are broken that need to be fixed. We can't trust any number they give us because it's very rarely correct.
Yeah, and then you ask them what bonding agent they use and why, and they just don't shut up for almost 4 hours. You know, they'll talk about bonding, and the other thing that's bizarre is they're always talking about cosmetic dentistry, veneers and bleaching and cosmetic, and then you go in their office, it's not even 1% of their revenue. It's like, why are you obsessed with? It's like dentists tell me, well, I've gone to 6 3-day weekends on TMJ. Like, well, what percent of your practice is TMJ? 0.5%? You just spent 6 3-day weekends at $5,000 a weekend developing 0.5% of your practice. I mean, sometimes I don't know whether to laugh or cry.
Yeah. Well, if I'm a patient, I want a dentist that knows everything about bonding agents. If I'm a dentist, I want to have a practice that's not breaking down around me. And I for sure, if I was going to run a business, I wouldn't hire a dentist to do it. Patients hire us dentists because we're good at dentistry. Dentists need to hire business people to run their practice. The problem is in the model that the country's had for the last 10 years, the only way to get your business people running your practice to sell to corporate dentistry and lose all autonomy and control. What we're trying to do here at Breakaway is build a model where the dentist truly does control their practice. They keep all their profits, and they have someone better than a corporate chain helping them fix the things that are broken. So they can be the person they naturally want to be, the dentist that does great work and takes courses on TMJ.
What if a dentist is listening to this just says, can you train my staff to do all this stuff? Is your 2.5-day seminar, if they said, okay, Scott, I hear you, but I'm one of those dogs, you let him out in the backyard and he pees on all 4 corners, and I have to own my own thing. I mean, Scott, I can't even count the number of associates that were working in an office making $240, $250 a year for just, 10 years, but they just had to own their own practice. And ever since then, they've never made $150. And it's like, because the territorial instincts of a mammal overweighed any economic gravity and math and addition, subtraction, geometry. I mean, I just see that all the time. I mean, that they come in, and again, it's that pride. They feel like you're a loser. Well, I'm a loser because I'm living at home with my mom and dad. Well, that's all free. I mean, why do you just want to go get an apartment? You're making $225 as an employee, but you just have to make $150 to own your own place. I mean, so a lot of emotions make us upset, but is the only if a dentist is territorial and he says, Scott, I'm not giving it up, I'm doing it all myself, would your 2.5-day seminar teach the front office all that stuff? I mean, is it theoretically possible?
That's basically what we do. We take 500 pages of content and how-to systems, step by step, what every practice should be doing to be healthy, and we give it to them in a format where they can go home, they can take it, and they can implement it with their own staff. They don't need years of consulting. They have all the answers there at the seminar. But what ends up happening is that most dentists will look at that and say, holy hell, I want this, but I'm so busy being a dentist that I can't do it all. And at that point, they have to either just be okay not being more successful and do nothing, or they have to hope that their staff just implements it without oversight, which won't happen, or they got to go hire a high-dollar consultant to provide a Band-Aid of implementing a few things and hope they stick and hope no staff quit and have to be retrained, or they can outsource and never have to think about it again.
Well, the consultant's going to be $50,000, and like I say, it's going to take a year, and then hopefully does it stick. But here's the one that I think is sad. I know, and I've never seen this with a female dentist and her male husband office manager. I think the males are assertive enough to where if they don't want to do it, they just stand up to their wife and say, I ain't going to do it. But so many males force their wife to be the office manager. And she never wanted to do it. She hates her job. She hates everything about it. She's not good at it. And she's miserable. And Scott, it oftentimes leads to a divorce. She wanted to stay home with her children, or she wanted to do her own career. You force her to do this, and now you're visiting your kids every other weekend. And so you won't outsource, but you'll make your lover, your wife, miserable. Have you seen that example where the office manager's the wife by default? And when you proposed to your wife, did you ever say, I take you to be my lawfully wedded office manager till death do us part? I mean, have you seen what I just described? Have you seen that?
We see it all the time, and it's usually the wife that calls us because she knows things are breaking down and she cares. She wants what's best. See, sometimes a front office person that's not a wife may not really care as much. So we have wife office managers and some husband office managers call us because they know things are broken down and they're not going to work 70 hours a week to try to figure out how to fix it. And so they call us.
And they see the stress in their lover.
Well, yeah, a dentist, all we want is to do good dentistry and have the support behind us to have the patient flow and the profit we need to have a great practice. The problem is we're getting slapped around by that infrastructure that doesn't really exist the way it should be. We don't have the support we need. We're not getting the patient flow we need. I mean, what I get asked all the time, well, how do you have 200 new patients in a month? What marketing are you doing? It's not about marketing. I mean, that's part of it, but it's about running the phones correctly. It's about high conversion rates. It's about not having bad online reviews from poor billing processes. It's about systems that are done, most of which are outsourced, that promote patient flow. We dentists, we just want to do good dentistry. We want to have a healthy AR, a healthy set of systems in our practice. We want to have the support that we need to do great dentistry and make a buck. Throwing our spouse in there as office manager is a Band-Aid that may or may not work. It could actually have terrible consequences. And not looking, not auditing, not listening to the calls, not knowing about AR it's a recipe for disaster. At some point, you're either going to be making a lot less money or you're going to be failing because you don't look at it. So if you're the dentist that won't look at it, if you're the dentist that won't go clean up all this crap, then you've got to either hope your staff does it, you got to hope a consultant will try to teach your staff how to do it and that they'll keep on doing it, or you got to go bring in the fire department and fix it all, and that's outsourcing.
Well said. Hey, I truly, from the bottom of my heart, want to do everything I can to help my homies. I really do. And what I've noticed with the continuing education, it's distinct markets. I mean, you write a book on implantology, and these great implantologists like Carl Misch will tell you this many thousands bought the book. There's a lot of people, like, I can pan over. I mean, I got all these books. There's a whole nother market, and all these guys will tell you that they're never going to read a dental textbook. They want to go sit in the lecture. The podcast is brand new because the iPhone or the smartphone is a multitasking behavior. These guys are all 85 to 90% of all my listeners aren't even seeing your gorgeous self and your blue shirt and tie and all that stuff. They're multitasking on an hour-long commute to work. But there's a whole nother huge segment on the online CE. I swear to God, a dentist won't listen to anything unless they get an hour credit for their AGD because they're trying to get their 500 hours for their fellowship or the state or whatever. And this is so rocking hot. And I wish you would create us an online CE course. And I'll tell you another reason. The biggest investment the average American's ever going to have is their house. And some of the smartest things grandma could do is sell it to a reverse annuity. And you're just not going to explain this to them on a 60-second ad. So the television ad deconstructs the sales process and just try to sell them to just call. And no one's gonna come visit you or call you back or whatever. Just call us. And then when you call them, they're going to say, look, I can't tell you anything until you just give me your address. And then they deconstruct it. And then once you get the address, say, Margaret, why leave all your money to your grandchildren? Give us your house. You can live there till you die, and you'll get another $1,200 a month, which is more than a Social Security check. I think you should deconstruct this 2.5-day seminar and put an hour online CE course. And a lot of these dentists are using the online CE. We put up 325 courses. They got 550,000 views. And a lot of these courses are staff meetings. The dentist will go get burgers, pizza, fries, whatever, and they'll sit there and have lunch and listen to Lunch and Learn. So I hope someday you deconstruct that 2.5 day hands-on and put a digital online CE course, because I really think if they wouldn't listen to you in 2.5 days, they'd have a lot less stress in their life, because we got 18% of dentists will spend in-house for addiction, and 85% of that's alcohol, 15% is about hydrocodone, and divorce. A third is finance, a third is about sex, and a third is about substance abuse. And basically everything I'm believing in this industry is that when the business is falling apart, they're more likely to develop an addiction, and they're more likely to get divorced. So I think your information is so rocking on. And Scott, thank you so much, because it was guys like you who made Dentaltown what it is for today.
Yeah, Howard, thank you so much for having me. And of course, you have changed dentistry with Dentaltown and the big idea and the big picture. And I'm just so happy with how everything's gone with Dentaltown and for dentistry. All of us dentists would be completely different without Dentaltown. I know you hear it all the time, but I can't help it. I got to say it too. It's just amazing. Thank you for what you've done for dentistry.
Well, we should start the Mutual Admiration Club, and we'll be the only 2 members. All right, buddy. Rock and roll, and good luck with everything you do. And I will see you in San Antonio.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
All right, buddy.